Some places are meant to draw you in with charm, but others, they whisper to you from the shadows, down a forgotten stretch of road, past the broken neon lights and a boarded up storefront. There's a shop that should have been left to rot. The sign reads, "Half price voodoo." And believe me, every curse, charm, and doll comes with a cost far greater than money. So settle in, dim the lights, and prepare yourself, because what you're about to hear is no ordinary story. It's a descent into the strange, the cursed, and the horrifying. Enjoy this terrifying tale here at Matchbox Creek. You ever get out of high school and realize you have no idea what the hell you want to do with your life? Turns out just kind of waiting and seeing where life takes you can really only get you so far. You're always told, oh, what do you want to do when you get out of high school? Simple enough question. Well, turns out it's a lot harder to figure that shit out when you don't really think of it the entire time you're in high school. So what do? When walking down that aisle and accepting your diploma and suddenly you realize you have no clue what you want to do with your life. My name is Travis, and when I graduated high school, I had no idea what the hell I wanted to do with my life. College? Not appealing to me. Job? Even less appealing. So what did I do with all my government-mandated education? Stayed home, sleeping all day, gaming all night. Typical deadbeat shit. And like any loving and supportive parents, my lovely mom and dad threatened to kick me out on my ass unless I found something to make of my life. So I weighed my options. College, I had no idea what I wanted to study, and the nearest college was several miles away. I had no scholarship opportunities. The idea of being in debt for the majority of my life was very unappealing. Job, I get home tired and probably have to listen to some asshole boss, so it was job I ended up choosing. Although trying to find any kind of employment in my town was near impossible. Unless I wanted to work at a factory for the rest of my life. I really had to expand my search from fast food to garbage man, throwing my application any place that had a help wanted sign. And that's how I ended up at Old King Creel's. Honestly, I don't really even remember applying here. I just got a call one day when I was laying in bed reading a book. Yeah, let's just say I was doing that. When my phone pulled me away from what I was doing, sighing as I stared at the unfamiliar number. The person behind the line talked with a heavy old southern accent, but I could tell how excited he was to meet me in person. And I was excited to finally shove it in my parents' face that I had made something of my life. Working at a voodoo shop, living the dream, right? Of course, if you ask me now what I would have chosen, college is looking a bit more optimal, if only a little bit. Now look, we've all heard the story of bosses from hell and shitty working conditions for shit pay. And to some extent, I get that. I'll get into my boss in a second. I really don't hate this place. The customers piss me off more than anything. Let me explain why by explaining my job. I work at Old King Creel's half-price voodoo shop. Quite the mouthful, huh? It's this glorified shack full to the brim with freaky dolls and spooky cobwebs. Lovely place, really. Especially at night when all the desperate people come in begging for wishes or potions. Oh yeah, we give out free wishes. Like really real wishes. But I don't handle that, so I'm not gonna talk much about them. Just remember, if you ever come in and ask for a wish, please think it thoroughly through. I'm so tired of wiping up the counter after a bad wish gets granted. The main thing I deal with is doll sales and potions. Need that wart removed? Got a great potion for that. You a shitty parent and forgot little Jimmy's birthday? One of the dolls should do it. Just don't come crying to me when Jimmy's soul gets trapped in the doll. We have a strict no return policy. Is it a scam? No. You bought it without asking if it could suck up Jimmy's soul. Can't really do much about that now, can I? Potions are more flexible. The only time I've seen it go bad was a weight loss potion. Had to sell to the angry lady a potion to get rid of all her excess skin. I don't know what she expected. She was like 300 pounds. Did she think all that skin was not going somewhere? The way I check into work is also pretty interesting, if I can call it that. I show up on time or 5 minutes late without fail, and stab a needle into a voodoo doll in the counter. It's not meant to look like anyone since it's a blank template, but still doesn't make it any less weird. I swear that thing looks at me whenever I'm on my phone when nobody's in the shop and I've got nothing to do. What do you want me to do? Wipe the counter down for the millionth time? I've tried, man. The dust always just comes back without fail. You turn around for half a second and the thing is back. It's gotten to the point where I just leave it and draw things in it. What else? Oh yeah, we have a basement I'm never allowed to go into. I was told by my boss. I'll talk about him soon. Called me horses. That I'm never allowed down there. Not that I even want to go down there. The loud knocking coming from it and the crying has pretty well and truly kept me away from it. Hey, don't you start judging me about it. If you're so damn curious, you go down there if you're so damn tough. I'm just the cashier. If I'm told not to go down in the freaky murder basement, I ain't fucking going down there. What else happens here? Well, the place seemingly stocks itself, so that's pretty cool. Sometimes. This place can get so boring when nobody is here that I wish I could restock the shelves or the potions, something, man. I get paid to sit behind the counter and ring up things people want to buy. Simple as that. I've been working here for about 2 months and man, does it feel like I've been here for decades. Each of my days takes like fucking 3, man. Alright, I'll stop whining and talk about my boss. If you guessed his name is King Creel, then ding ding, congratulations. You've been paying attention to my dumb ramblings. King Creel's, who we'll shorten to KC for now, is weird. Like an uncanny valley kind of weird. He's this 6'4" lanky man with messy black hair and button eyes. You ever watch Caroline? Yeah, we're approaching other mother territory. Though I guess he's got her beat 'cause he's real. And his mouth is sewn up, same with his throat and neck, like he got stitches all around his neck. Sometimes when he turns his head too quickly, you can see it wobble and his stitch is about to snap. It's gross. He's pretty cool, all things said, though he definitely doesn't have a concept of personal space. When I walked into work for my first day, he came out of God knows where and grabbed my hand and put his face like a good 3 inches away from my face. One thing that strikes you about KC, apart from the stitches and button eyes, is how pale he is. Now, I'm no bronze god myself, but KC is about as pale as white chalk. Like it's unreal. When I first met him, I thought he was wearing paint or some shit like that, but nope. That's his skin. I think anyway. If you look at him long enough, you kind of see his skin cracking like a sun-bleached corpse or something. I don't know. All in all, he isn't such a bad boss. He pays well enough. I get $20 an hour just to sit here and ring up an occasional customer. You got a wish? Sorry, that's KC's department. And of course, if you fuck up your wish and end up as a bloody mess on the floor and counter, guess what poor idiot has to clean that up? Yours truly. So please, if you ever show up to old King Creel's half-price voodoo shop, think your stupid wishes through. Now, if you'll excuse me, my break is done, and that thing in the basement is really banging on the door, and that doll on the counter is really giving me the stink eye. If anything else interesting happens here, I'll let you guys know. Seems as though my original post was pretty popular, despite me just talking about how bored I am with my job. Well, it turns out I guess I didn't make it scary enough for most people. So to fix that, I thought I would tell you guys a story from my second week of working at this half-price voodoo shop, as a reward for you guys liking it so much. Well, just in case you have no idea who I am and stumbled on this post before my last one, my name is Travis, and I work at old King Creel's half-price voodoo shop. I run the desk as a clerk and overall just do my best to keep up with all the weird shit that happens here, like what happened when I just started working here. I had punched in like any other day before, stabbing a pin into that doll template that just stares at me all day from its spot on the counter. At this point, I was still struggling in vain to keep the counter clean, but alas to no avail. So I resigned myself to just fuck around on my phone until I saw some form of life. Travis, my boy. Came the voice of my boss, the owner of this fine establishment, King Creel himself. How's the job been treating you? He asked, his stitched up lips curled into a smile as he came around the corner and wrapped an arm around me, causing me a decent amount of discomfort. As I've mentioned before, King Creel has button eyes, a stitched up mouth, and a head being kept on his shoulders by some stitches. He always wears a nice black suit with a dark purple tie and a top hat. Yes, even indoors, and yes, I know how he looks ridiculous, but look man, I'm trying to keep this job as long as possible, so don't blow this for me. It's going okay, Mr. Creel, I said awkwardly, still at this point weirded out by his looks and his unnaturally chalk-white skin. He nodded happily at me and gave me a good smack on the back, getting a loud oof out of me. Fantastic to hear, son. Now remember, they come asking for a wish, oh, you just come fetch old King Creel, and I'll be right on over. He hummed happily, finally letting go of me and standing back. I nodded since that was really the only thing I didn't have to do here. By the way, I think one of the dolls is missing, I pointed out to him, pointing towards the wall of voodoo dolls that goes from the floor to the ceiling. Each of them is of a different design and of a different person, so if one goes missing, there's usually a reason. Oh. Well, I'll be, he hummed, almost happily as his button eyes turned back to me, and he gave me a yellow-toothed smile behind his stitches. I expect a customer will come in today. He chuckled, walking past me and patting me on the shoulder. His hand was cold as ice. Giving a bit of a shiver as he vanished to the office in the back, I sat my butt down on the uncomfortable stool that sat behind the counter and went back to looking at my phone, periodically peeking at the doll on the counter and turning it back over whenever it somehow managed to turn and look at me. About an hour into my shift, the old rusty bell on the door clanged, signaling me to get off my phone as I quickly hit it and looked over to the customer. It was a girl, about my age, maybe a year older. She looked around at the place, a bit disgusted by all the cobwebs, quickly coming closer to me. Luckily, she didn't look at the wall of dolls since their gaze followed her as she came up to the counter. "Hi, welcome to Old King Creel's half-price voodoo shop," I said in my best "I do actually want to be here" voice. "What can I help you with?" I asked her, putting my hands on the counter and looking down to make sure it wasn't too dusty. Hi, the sign outside said you guys do free wishes?" she asked me, with a raised brow. She seemed like the sporty kind of person. How do I know this? Because she was wearing workout gear in the middle of fall. She obviously was jogging and saw our sign. How exactly does that work?" she asked me. "Yeah, I gotta get my boss to handle that. Wait here while I go get him," I asked her, and she nodded, still a bit skeptical about this place, and I really don't blame her about that at all, if I'm being honest. Getting off my stool, I stretched a bit and made my way over to the king's office, flinching when whatever was in the basement started pounding on the door again. At this point, I was still afraid of it, so I just quickly ran past it to the boss man's office, knocking 3 times like I always was told to do. "Hey, Mr. Creel? We have someone here asking about a wish," I said, receiving silence from the office, raising a brow that I tried again, knocking another 3 times to get a response, although the response I got was the girl at the counter screaming. Turning quickly, I saw that it was just my boss standing at the counter. Looking back at the office and over to the counter, I scratched my head at how the hell had he gotten over there so quickly, but ultimately resigned myself to it just being not worth my time to think about it. "I do apologize for startling you, darling," King Krill hummed, taking his hat off and putting it to his chest. "I do forget sometimes that my appearance does frighten the faint of heart," he hummed with a chuckle. "Yeah, I had the same reaction as that girl when I first seen him." "It's a little early for Halloween," the girl pouted, backing up from him, and I can imagine really rethinking the idea of coming in here. I wouldn't have blamed her if she had left right there. Would have saved me the trouble cleaning up afterwards. "What can I do for you, Melissa?" my boss asked, putting his hat back on that messy mat of black hair he owned and putting his hands out in front of him, obviously throwing the girl off by knowing her name. She looked to me as if I was having the same reaction. I just shrugged at her. He did the same thing to me, so I didn't know what she wanted. "Well," she began, looking back at him and pursing her lips in thought. "What does asking for a wish entail?" she asked him, crossing her arms at him. Not a bad question to ask, in my honest opinion. "Oh, well, you ask little on me for a wish and I grant it for you. No strings attached," he hummed, holding his hands up and showing that some strings dangled down from his gloved fingers. "I do ask that you think your wish thorough, very thoroughly. Wishes have a bad tendency of backfiring," he said with a sad tone. I looked at my boss with a raised brow. That was the first time I'd seen him show any kind of emotion that wasn't, well, creepy happy is the best way to describe him. Seemingly sensing I was staring at him, his attention turned to me. "Travis, can you please get something out of my office?" he asked with a hum. I looked up at him confused since I was never really allowed in there, but hey, he pays me, so I might as well do it, right? Sure, what do you need?" I asked, looking to the counter and noticing that stupid doll was staring at me again. "Get the brown satchel bag that's under the desk. I'll handle young Miss Melissa," he hummed, turning his attention back to her, his hands coming down to the dusty counter and drumming his hands on them. "Sure thing, sir," I shrugged, giving one last look to the girl before turning and going to his office. Not before that thing in the basement started banging again and startled me, quickly rushing past it and into his office. King Creel's office was surprisingly spotless. I say that because the entire shop is covered in dust and cobwebs, so seeing such a nice office was definitely jarring. I know you guys are expecting severed heads and dead bodies everywhere, but really, he just has a desk and some photos on the wall. All of them are scratched out though, so I don't really pay too much attention to it. Going over to his desk and looking underneath it, I indeed see the satchel bag he told me to fetch. Taking it and heading out of the office, I came back to Melissa shaking, his gloved hands, and both of their attentions turned to me. "Travis, good boy, you found it," he hummed as he motioned for me to come closer to him. I did and handed him the satchel. With a cheerful grin on his stitched up mouth, he quickly slammed it down on the counter, kicking up dust and sending both me and Melissa into a coughing fit. He opened it up and searched inside of it for a bit, his smile growing wider and seemingly about to burst his stitches when he pulled out exactly what he was looking for, pulling out a small can of what looked like skincare cream. "Now then, your exact wish was that you never wanted acne problems ever again, correct?" he asked the girl, tilting his head and waiting for an answer. From my angle at his side, I could notice that his head really strained the stitches on his neck. That would have been funny to see his head go rolling around the shop. Melissa looked uncomfortable, obviously self-conscious about my being there, but she nodded to the voodoo salesman, who in turn handed her the cream. She looked down at it and then up to me, a quizzical look on her face. "Well, go on then, darling. Try it out," Creel said, a smile still on his face. Melissa looked down at it and uncapped it. I tried to peek from my spot next to Creel from behind the counter into the jar. It was just a normal white cream like any other kind of skincare product. Melissa sighed as she dipped her finger into the cream and got a conservative amount, tapping it on her cheek and face as she spread it out in circles on the surface. And when she was finished, she pulled out her phone from her pocket and looked at herself, eyes raised as she waited for something to happen. And, well, something did happen. She started screaming really loud, and her skin started sizzling and dripping off her face. Now, I'm not squeamish, but being caught off guard like that, I backed up and away from the counter. What the fuck is this? Melissa screamed as the skin on her face started dripping off her faster, like a melting candle. Meanwhile, I was behind the counter struggling to keep my food down. Luckily for me, I had skipped breakfast, so I just gagged a lot. "You asked for no more acne, dear," Creel hummed over her loud screams and the sizzling of her skin. "Now, you won't have to worry about that ever again," he hummed with a soft chuckle as he watched her squirm and scream some more. At this point, Melissa's face was mostly on the floor in a bloody mess. She clawed at what was left of her skin as it melted her down to her skull. Her hands weren't spread either as they too started melting their skin off. It took less than 2 minutes for the girl called Melissa to have become nothing but a steaming pile of bones, blood, and other gross shit on the shop floor. "Travis, be a good boy and clean up this mess, please," Creel said as he turned his attention to me. I was still hacking and looked up to him like he was insane. I just watched some girl die in front of me and now he wanted me to get rid of her? Just a little bit crazy, don't you think? I started to stammer, holding my stomach and shivering some at what I'd just seen. But my gaze turned when he gripped me by the shoulder and stared into my eyes with his button eyes. "Be a good boy. Clean this up. Put the pile of bones in a trash bag and toss it into the basement," he hummed to me, raising his finger quickly when I tried to remind him that I wasn't allowed in the basement. "I'll be down there, so you don't worry about it," he hummed, patting me hard on the back and walking over to the door, unlocking it with a key he produced from his suit pocket and inserting it into the basement door. Opening it up quickly, he closed it behind him. I could hear his muffled yelling and whatever was downstairs scurrying away from the door as his footsteps disappeared down into the unknown. Looking over at the pile of human bones and blood, I sighed hard and looked behind the counter, putting on rubber gloves and getting out a mop, and I went to work. Collecting all the bones by hand, I put it in a trash bag and did my best to hold my breath. I didn't know if he wanted the organs in there as well, so I just scooped them up quickly and shoved them into the bag, gagging hard when I finally let them go into the bag. Setting that aside, I did my best to mop the leftover blood. I did a decent job for it being my first time and all. Finally, I grabbed the bag and went over to the basement door, looking at it and swallowing a lump in my throat before I opened the door and looked down into the pitch black hole. Looking at the bag, I tied it up as good as I could and chucked it down there, closing the door again and sighing hard as I kept a hand on it and looked down at the floor. A little shining piece of broken porcelain caught my attention. Reaching down, I grabbed it and looked at it. It was just a white piece, maybe from a vase or something, so I shoved it in my pocket and went back to my stool, pulling out my phone and shivering as I scrolled through it. King Creel returned after 30 minutes, slamming the door shut and locking it, mumbling something to himself as he took off his hat and dusted it. Looking over to me, with his smile returned, and he walked over to me, peering over the counter to see my work. "Excellent work, Travis," he hummed, wrapping an arm around me and looking at me like a proud father when his son caught his first fish. "Why don't you take the rest of the day off? Here, for all your trouble," he hummed, rolling his fingers like he was doing a card trick and producing $200. Staring at that amount of money and then back at him, he could have asked me to lick the dusty counter and I would have done it. Taking it from him, I nodded and thanked him, getting everything I came with, my phone and nothing else, and unstuck the pin from the voodoo doll I left without another word said. Now look, I know what you're all thinking. I covered up some girl's death or helped get rid of her body, and you're right, I did. But in my own defense, I did get paid a lot to do it, and it seems like everyone thought she just ran away. No police ever came to the shop, and they never do whenever wishes go bad. So don't you start preaching to me, not like I'm the one telling people to make wishes without thinking them through. So if you ever end up at this shop, think your wishes through, okay? Now I need to get back to work. Customer just walked in.